Welcome to Special News Channel. The armed forces of Ukraine now reap the fruit of their last offensive and have stepped into Kherson at last under the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. The west of the Dnipro River, which divides Kherson in two, was completely cleared of the Russian army. The Russian army is compressed into the eastern part of Donbas, Crimea and Kherson. But especially the Kherson offensive brought a very serious cost to the Ukrainian armed forces. In the attacks that continued for about 2.5 months, critical targets of the Russian army were beaten with HIMARS artillery for a very long time. These costs also revealed a completely different scenario for the war. The need for 155mm long-range artillery guns of the Ukrainian armed forces has increased day by day. Even though the support from the USA and the West met the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces to a certain degree, Kyiv broke new record in the artillery shells used. Reports from the region indicate that the Ukrainian armed forces use more than 5,155mm howitzer rounds per day. These costs are not only valid for Ukraine. Russia also used a large number of long-range artillery shells throughout the war and applied to North Korea for the supply of these shells. While it has been stated that North Korea has been supporting Russia for a long time in order to fill this deficit, South Korea stepped in to meet the needs of Ukraine. In the scenario that emerged, both South and North Korea were drawn into the war. Russia and Ukraine's race to stockpile their artillery arsenals unexpectedly drew two other rivals, North Korea and South Korea, into the conflict. Seoul may supply artillery to Ukraine for the first time, following reports that North Korea is transferring artillery shells to Russia. On November the 10th, it was reported that a secret arms deal between Seoul and Washington would allow South Korea to send artillery shells to Ukrainian forces for the first time. According to US officials familiar with the deal, speaking to the point of sale, the US will receive 100,000 rounds of 155mm artillery ammunition from South Korean manufacturers. The number of artillery munitions Washington is considering sending to Ukraine will be enough for at least a few weeks of fierce fighting. The deal came as Ukrainian officials demanded more weapons to focus on a counterattack that drove Russian forces out of certain areas they occupied in the initial stages. Weapons supplied by South Korea would allow the United States to arm Ukraine without depleting the US ammunition stockpile, which US officials say is rapidly depleting. If the reports are correct, the latest move represents a global hunt for artillery ordnance after months into the Ukrainian-Russian war. In August, the Pentagon had expressed concerns about the dwindling American 155mm artillery stock, and the situation has worsened since then. The decision will ease the stockpile pressure on howitzer ammunition, which is used extensively by Ukrainian forces. In June, Vadim Skibitsky, Ukraine's deputy head of military intelligence, said that Ukrainian forces are using between 5,000 to 6,000 artillery shells per day in the ongoing war against Russia. On the other hand, Russia was firing about 20,000 rounds a day. These numbers are incredible and are rapidly depleting the stocks of both countries. South Korea's Ministry of Defense has acknowledged the ongoing debate over the sale of indefinite quantities of 155mm shells to replenish depleted US supplies. However, the ministry noted that the negotiations are proceeding with the assumption that the United States will be the end user of these shells and that Seoul will continue to provide only non-lethal aid to Ukraine. However, this seems to be a reflection of the indirect support given to Ukraine by strengthening the US stocks. By channeling the deal through the United States, South Korea could fulfill its public oath not to provide lethal military aid to Ukraine while supporting Washington, Seoul's most important partner in deterring North Korea. This is a projection of Russian aid from North Korea. North Korea's alliance may return to them as a stockpile of 155mm artillery shells in Kyiv's hands. The South Korean deal offers a definitive response to concerns that North Korea is secretly transporting artillery to Russia. The White House recently claimed that North Korea sent artillery shells to Russia. This presents an unprecedented situation where opposing European powers could use the weapons of the two Asian countries. The arms deals are also a reminder of the limitations of the US and Russia's industrial bases, severely strained by the Ukraine war. While Pyongyang sided with Moscow in the deadly Ukraine-Russia war, It also blamed the United States for the crisis. The country claimed that the hegemonic policy of the West forced Russia to take military action to defend its security interests. North Korea has been isolating itself from the world for a long time and claims that this isolation is due to the harsh attitude of the West. However, the oppression of the dictatorial leader of North Korea on his people and the complete closure of his country to the world make it problematic with almost all the states in the world. Thinking that Russia is experiencing a similar situation, Pyongyang is actually covering up the contradictory moves made by itself and Russia. In September, US authorities reported that Russia was in the process of procuring rockets and artillery shells from North Korea. North Korea later denied this allegation and asked Washington to stop making reckless statements. Besides, South Korea had previously limited its aid to non-lethal supplies and equipment destined for Ukraine. After Russia's attack on Mariupol in April, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky asked South Korea to send deadly weapons. However, Seoul had rejected Ukraine's request at the time. Meanwhile, observers argued that the compatibility of North Korea's Soviet-origin military equipment could make it an important supplier of ammunition to Russia. In turn, North Korea may seek Russian technology and fuel transfers to strengthen its military capabilities while pursuing more powerful missiles and nuclear bombs. Also, security analysts believe that North Korea and South Korea have sizable arsenals due to long-standing tensions along their heavily guarded and militarized joint borders. For this reason, the transfer of these stocks to Ukraine and Russia will change the course of the war. In addition to South Korean aid, the Pentagon will pay Lockheed Martin more than $520 million to replace guided rockets sent to Ukraine. The Pentagon has signed more than $520 million contracts to replace the thousands of guided artillery rockets it has sent to Ukraine since June 1st, according to a statement emailed to reporters on Monday morning. Contracts awarded to defense contractor Lockheed Martin between October 21st and November 2nd came with a statement regarding the purchase of HIMARS missiles, which are considered to have destroyed a large number of Russia's missiles. Many Russian command centers in Ukraine, as well as ammunition and supplies depots, were destroyed with these weapons. Munitions are often called GMLRS after the abbreviation GMLRS. These awards demonstrate the significant impact the GMLRS has had on the battlefield as a vital combat capability, said William A. LaPlante, Pentagon senior purchasing officer, in a statement. The number of rockets to be purchased is uncertain. A Lockheed Martin spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment, and the spokesperson for the U.S. Army Missiles and Space Program Executive Office, which oversees the contracting process, was unable to provide an immediate response. The average purchase price of a single GMLRS rocket has ranged from roughly $100,000 to $130,000 each since 2012, according to government budget documents. Using this figure, the contracts would account for around 4,000 spare rockets. GMLRS rockets carry warheads containing 200 pounds of explosives and attack at a range of about 82 miles using satellite guidance. This is the longest range of any weapon the US has ever sent to Ukraine. The Ministry of Defense said that so far it has supplied Ukraine with 16 HIMARS launches and also funds Kiev to purchase 18 more. But it will take years for them to be produced and delivered. In June, a spokesperson for the company said Lockheed had produced more than 60,000 GMLRS rockets since the program began more than 20 years ago, including in Bahrain, the UK, Finland, Germany, Italy, Japan, Jordan, Poland, Romania, Singapore, and the United Arab Emirates. And it sells to a number of countries, including France. The Ukrainian armed forces will continue to need HIMARS missiles no matter what, because since these weapons fell into the hands of Ukraine, the war has evolved to a point where Ukraine is stronger. Kiev will do everything in its power to protect this pressure.